Hello there and welcome to the English Language Club. It's time for our weekly hangout. My name and this is Tony Culpa. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Very good, very good. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, you're very welcome. And just to let you know, what we do in these live streams is we just answer your questions about learning English. So if you have any questions, please do write them in the chat now, because we haven't got any questions so far. Yeah, it'd be good to get some questions coming in so that we've got something to talk about. And yeah, if you are watching and you don't have a question, just say hi anyway. It'd be great to know who's watching us and to say hi to you. Over on our Discord, we do have a Discord channel. So if you look in the description, you can see a link to that. And we do have some questions coming in there during the week. And we've got one question from Jack Darby, who says, you know, Jack's very active on the Discord, and he always has some questions for us there, which is good. He says, what are the changes that have occurred in how English is taught over the years? The difference between how they taught English in the past and how they tend to teach it now. I noticed that teachers are a bit more lenient on the grammatical aspect these days. So that's an interesting question because things have changed over the years. I mean, not so much in the time I've been teaching, but like longer term, right? What do you think, Tony?
Well, I think both. I think long term and in the last several years. I remember one of the English teachers that I worked with at the first school where I taught. He was big on this, talking about how teaching English was changing, and has changed even since then. So I think it's some of both.
Yeah, it's definitely constantly evolving.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that you see with teaching English specifically is that a lot of the institutions and schools and textbooks and things that have been set up for teaching English all over the world lag behind the kind of best teaching practices in the English speaking world, because they are established and then they continue to use those methods and those textbooks for years, even once they've changed, right? And so I think that you wind up seeing some older teaching methods, sometimes very old books, or that have an older style or older way of saying things than is current nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember when I was teaching at one place in South America, there was one of the books we used was like 10 years out of date, or 10 years old, and it had like one lesson on like parts of a camera, and it was like not a digital camera,
right?
And it had like the film, and it was teaching like just vocabulary that people may be interested to know, but we're not going to ever use in the real world, because by then everything had switched to digital cameras and things. So just a quick shout out to Lydia, who says hi, Fatima
Welcome.
from Egypt, and Amara from Pakistan. So just to remind you, get your questions coming in, and we will answer them. But yeah, back to this first question about how teaching has changed. I mean, there's also different schools that have their own methodology, and sometimes that methodology is sort of simpler and doesn't require learning grammar rules and things like that.
That's true. There's a lot more of that too. There's a lot more programs and schools out there that focus on different things. And not all of it is good, but some of it is like what you brought up last week. You know, oh, here's a method that you can learn all of English in 30 days, and some of it is just kind of more bragging than reality. And so they choose to focus on whatever's the easiest thing that they can teach for 30 days.
Yeah, and some of it also is a way of getting teachers trained in a day, rather than, you know, you could take any native speaker who wants to do a bit of traveling and visit some foreign countries and train them in like a day how to teach with the certain material, rather than having them do a longer course. Now, a lot of courses are not that long. Like you can do a CELTA in 4 weeks, but it's intense. It's an intense 4 weeks. That's what I did, but even so, I still probably learned more actually teaching then. But that was a great foundation. But there's a really big school. I can't remember the name of it. It's worldwide. They had one in Paraguay when we were there. But yeah, that's their methodology is they don't talk about any of the grammar terms or anything. And the teachers just sort of follow the book, and it's all speaking and responding. And that's their method, which is designed partly to be a certain technique for learning and teaching, but also a way of just having any old native speaker be able to teach to some extent. But there is also a move away from grammar and rules and things, and that's what although we do teach grammar and a little bit of the rules, but we are very much focused on what's useful and not what, and that end goal of being able to communicate and express yourself in English. And if something is useful towards that goal, then we like to use it. That goes for grammar and phonetics,
exactly.
As well. But I still see so many students who say, "Oh, I've got a grammar exam or a phonetics exam," and it's like they're just learning the phonetics and grammar for the sake of it, when it's not. It's like their goal is to learn English, but the goal of their course is to teach them phonetics, which, although phonetics is a useful tool, it shouldn't be the end goal, or it's not the end goal for most students. But their course forces them to make it the end goal.
Right. So a good example, actually, I think, is Amara's question that she just put on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll bring that up. So nowadays, I'm watching Mind Your Language, a very famous program about spoken English course. There I learned that after Q always comes U. Why is it necessary? Please explain. Okay.
So this is a good example of, I think, well, first of all, I can answer the question. And it has to do with the history of the English language. The letter Q is not an original part of the English language. It has kind of been brought in here. So actually, QU is one sound. The letter Q in English does not have a sound by itself. The letter QU has the K sound, right? Now, the reason that we have a whole letter that doesn't have a sound by itself is just because of the history of English. It didn't form all at once. It has slowly added new things to itself over time, right? And that's why it's changed. But this is a good example of how there's multiple different levels of how well you learn the rules, right? So you might go through your entire English experience and never really realize that this is a rule. You just, all the words that have Q in them also have a U in them, right? And that would be fine. There would be no problems with that if you just, queen and quick and quack and quiet. You just learn how to spell them because, sometimes English words are just spelled weird, right? Or you might know, oh, hey, Q always goes with U. It's always QU. It's just a rule. And you're like, oh, okay, that'll help me if I'm spelling these words. I'll remember I always have to put the U after the Q. Or you can dig deeper and you can learn about the history of the language and understand why the U comes with the Q. But really, it's just about what level is going to be most useful to you. Some people, like me, need to know why it works that way. And I'll remember it better once I've heard the story of why it works that way, right? Another random rule in English spelling is that V, the letter V, never comes at the end of a word. When I was a kid, there was a sketch on a children's program where there was this person who was dressed like the letter V, and they had like a vest, that they were wearing. It was a really fancy vest, and they were at a party, and his vest got ripped, and it had a big rip on one side of it, and he was freaked out because he had to stand in words, and people would see the rip in his vest. And so the letter E said, you know what, I've got your back. Whenever you have to be in a word, at the end of the word, I'll stand next to you to cover that side of your vest. Now, of course, that has nothing to do with the reason that rule exists. But to me, it helped me remember as a kid that you don't put V at the end of a word. Always, if a word ends in V, it would then have an E after it. So it just really depends on what helps you to learn things. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How many levels of rules it's important to understand.
And that rules are never really rules that you can't break. They're always more like guidelines that are there to help you, or they're even observations, because really they're not rules. It's not like this is the rule that the language is based on. The language sort of grew organically over the years, and then they made this observation: oh, we never really spell words with we never use the Q without the U after it.
Right.
So, you know.
So, but if if you have a course where you're studying like those rules, I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's something that as it comes up, it's useful to know, or it might not be useful to know. But sometimes we get a lot of questions where it seems like people are taking a whole course on the rules. So
remember the end goal. Remember your goal is to learn English and not learn all the rules. You know, because that's not the same thing.
So you learn the rules that will help you, right?
Yeah. Great. Okay, we've got a few more questions coming in. So let's see. We've got just a quick hi to Gabby in Mexico, who's just joined us. Sime, we'll get to your question. But first, we've got the question from Sunil, who says, Sir, I want to ask you something. How to learn sentence making? What is the right way to learn sentence making that I can learn to write and to help with reading too? So, sentence, do you mean, I think you mean sort of sentence structure. I suppose, I mean, we've got a whole course on it's called Inside English, which is focusing on the tenses and the different, in there, a big idea in the course is that the three main sentence structures of positive, negative, and questions. But then beyond that, there is a whole other level of sentence structure, because you can have sentences with more than one, like, subject and verb and things. But yeah, I mean, that's one thing. So on that very basic level, you've got three types of sentences: positive, negative, and question. And you've got in every sentence you'll have a subject and a verb, and most of the time you'll have a auxiliary verb. In fact, technically, you've always got an auxiliary verb. It's just sometimes you don't actually need to say it, but it is kind of there in the background. That's the way we like to describe it.
It's like a contraction.
Yeah, like a contraction. So a positive sentence would have subject. Like, I'll give you an example. I am walking. So a positive would be subject, I, auxiliary verb, am, main verb, walking. So subject, auxiliary verb, main verb. Then to make that negative, you just add not, I am not walking. And then to make it a question, you flip the subject and the auxiliary verb. Am I walking? So those three structures are sort of very, very simple and very regular. And every sentence fits that one of those three structures. So, and that's what we sort of like to get at. That's what we get at in the course English Language Club. How there's these. Well, that's one of the things.
One of the things, yeah.
Yeah, to help make tense make sense. But there are other levels of sentence structures. Is that something, Tony, you've got? You would.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, one thing that I would add to that is remember that a sentence, even a question, is going to fit that structure, and it's going to sound like a sentence with just something slightly changed, right? So even if you say, what was the example you used? Am I what?
I am walking.
Oh, right. I am walking. Am I walking? Even if you're going to add a WH question, why am I walking? Right? How am I walking? Where am I walking to? Right? You still use that same structure, and then you add a WH question to it as well. Right? So yeah, that's also important. Yeah, depending on what level you're talking about, then there are many more complex things that you can do to two sentences, right? You can string two sentences together with an and or a but. So instead of saying, it's raining, I went outside, you could say it's raining, but I went outside, right? Or even it's raining, but I went outside anyway, and so on. So learning how to string multiple sentences together increases the complexity of your sentence structure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. I hope that's helpful, Sunil. Let us know if you had a problem, if it's a more deeper thing, or if you've got a sort of follow-up question, and we can answer that as well. And we've been joined by a few more people, so you're very welcome. Hello, and let us know who you are and where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, please do type them in the chat as well. Sime says, what's your advice for English teacher candidates who speak English as a second language? Interesting. So now I think, so having taught English, it seemed, taught English in other countries, it kind of feels a bit weird to me, although I can understand it, why we are often, like a native speaker is sort of considered like a really good thing to have a teacher who's a native speaker, and you can almost charge a premium almost. And it seems a bit weird to me, because you can have a native speaker who's got no experience of teaching, and maybe they're not even a very good teacher, but they're still considered. It's like a brand, I suppose. It doesn't really mean anything, but people seem to think that they're a better teacher.
I think what they're better at, and the reason this comes, is because having conversations with native English speakers is an extremely important part of learning any language. That's the natural way that people learn languages, is by having conversations with a native speaker of that language. And there are even functions of a language that supposedly you can only learn by conversing with someone in that language. There's no way you're ever going to be able to teach them a rule or have them memorize things, that you just have to converse. And that's really the goal of having native English speakers. And that's as teachers, but all you really need, there's other things, but the main thing is you need to find a way for your students to be able to have those conversations with native speakers. And so one of the things I bring up all the time, it is very important. It is very important. But one of the reasons I talk about this all the time is encourage people to find an online community where they can communicate with native speakers. It's not that you need to have someone in class, right, to talk to, but you should be encouraging your students to find ways to have conversations with native English speakers. That is an important part of learning the language.
But Sime is asking about for non-native English speakers, what are the advice,
so that's what I would recommend. That's my advice. If they're worried about not having a native English speaker as a teacher, encourage them to find online communities where they can have conversations, natural conversations with English speakers, not about English, but about whatever they are passionate about movies, about anime, about video games, right? Because that's fine. And then you can teach them, you can go through the steps and teach them to speak the language, and then they can still practice speaking to a native speaker somewhere else, right?
Yeah, and on that, so I think that actually for the teaching, to a certain extent, non-native English speakers have an advantage in that they can communicate in their first language, they may have a common first language, so they can explain things more easily, especially at the lower levels where
at very low levels.
Yeah. So there are advantages to being a non-native speaker who has the same first language as the learner, I think. So, yeah, and what I was getting at is that I think people worry about it too much, and they get a sort of sense of insecurity because they're not a native speaker, or they don't speak as well as a native speaker, but they end up teaching, or they want to teach. And I think that they shouldn't worry about that. They should think about the ways that they can be better than a native speaker, and focus on those strengths, because there are strengths, there are advantages. I mean, because if you're a Spanish speaker, say, and you are learning, and you've learned English, and you're now teaching it, you're likely to have had the same problems that your students have had, or are having. Where a native speaker will just, especially one who's not very experienced at teaching, they may not even the problems that the students might have just might not make any sense to a native speaker, or it might not. It could take a long time to just explain what the problem is. Certain because you're coming from the same point as your students, so that's a big advantage, I think, in many ways. There are advantages in the higher levels for conversation practice and things for having a native speaker, but there's also advantages, especially at lower levels, of having a teacher who has the same first language. Okay, so yeah, that's my advice. So that's we've got to the end. We got just hi from Gabby in Mexico, and Amara. I think this is a follow up from the
about
question.
Mind Your Language.
Yeah, it says there was a 40-year-old drama.
They're talking about Mind Your Language. That's the name of an old television program. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I haven't. Maybe I have seen that. I don't know.
You probably have. It's a British sitcom, I think, from the.
Yes. And yeah, you often get clips of that on like Instagram and Facebook and things, I think. Yeah. Okay. So any more that we've got to the end of the questions. So if anyone else has any questions, get those questions coming in, or any more follow-ups from the questions we've already had. That would be good too. Otherwise, we're going to have to end this very early, which I don't want to do. Yeah. What do you think, Tony? Have you got any interesting things to say?
Not off the top of my head. Oh, it looks like we have another question.
Yeah, we got a question here from I don't know how to pronounce that. XRP something. Sorry, Cryptus one. Yeah. Hi. What advice can you provide for the PET exam? There are several sections, including describing a picture. The PET exam, that's one of the Cambridge ones. Is that one of the Cambridge ones?
I think so.
Yeah. Just trying to remember what it stands for. Preliminary. Yeah. So it's quite a basic level test, I think. Now, specifically, as you can tell, I've not worked with the PET exam specifically, but for any exam, what you need to do is, obviously you're not going to be able to see the exam questions before the exam, not the actual questions, but you can see the type of question that you're going to get, the type of exercise that you're going to get in the exam, whether that's speaking, reading, listening, whatever part of the exam. And it's always a good idea to do practice exam, but just really familiarize yourself with the type of exercise you're going to get. And a lot of textbooks will be based on, obviously they're teaching English, but they might be geared towards a particular exam, both in their level, but also in the types of exercises that they give you. They're essentially, the textbooks will effectively be full of similar types of exercise that you're going to get in the exam. So yeah, I would say familiarize yourself with the types of exercise that you're going to get. So do practice them, so that when you get into the real exam, you don't it's not you're not trying to figure out what you have to do. You know exactly what you have to do, so you don't need to waste any time on that. What do you think, Tony? Anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I do agree with that. There's, oftentimes it's a good idea to prepare yourself specifically for the test, but yeah.
Yeah. So just just try to familiarize yourself with the type of exercise. And I'm sure that with PET, it's probably the same as the KET, Key English Test, and the what's the other one? I can't remember the examination.
I don't remember them.
I used to teach them a lot, but yeah. But yeah, they have similar types of exercises. So yeah. So I hope that's helpful, Crypto Swan. Let us know if it is, and if you've got a follow-up question, please do answer, because we don't have any more questions yet. But Sumit says hi. So hello, Sumit Kumar. Let us know if you've got a question. Oh, he does actually. It says, can you please spell official? Is that
OFFICIAL? Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. You mean pronounce official? Official. That's
official.
Then it follows up by saying, is it official to speak? So yeah, official is pronounced like that. So it's, oh, hang on. So that there you've misspelled it. There you've written official. It's got an I in it. So that I after the C makes a S sound. Well, actually, it's a sh sound. Official. There is a sort of, the C is a strange letter because it's either a K sound or a S sound. So you kind of, and we've got a K sound letter in the alphabet and a S. So we kind of don't need the C letter in a way. But we have it anyway. But I kind of, I joke that, we could get rid of C. Even though my name begins with the letter C, I'd be happy to spell it with a K. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I hope that's helpful, Sumit. Let us know if you have a follow-up question. Somebody's saying they have a question. Okay, yes, here. Do you have a lecture about morphemes and morph? So now this is, we talked earlier when we were talking about teaching methodology about sometimes, you get, most of the time your end goal is to learn English and to be able to communicate better in English. And in English Language Club, we try to hold that goal as the main thing. That's the main thing we're trying to help people get to get people to achieve. But often you find courses and things that kind of get sucked down these tangents of learning all the grammar rules or learning all the phonetics rules. And so I've done a lot of videos on phonetics, but I've never gone really, really deep. I've not talked too much about morphemes and morphology, and because I don't feel that it's that helpful for people learning English. Now, if you're learning phonetics, that's a different matter. because that is a whole science and subject in its own right. But yeah, so I don't have any lectures, any lessons or videos on this. I may have done one very briefly where I basically said that we don't like to get this deep. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, yeah. Again, we're focused more on helping people learn to speak as opposed to learn the details of linguistics. You know? Sorry, Khaled.
Yeah. So it's probably not very helpful. But
I mean,
but briefly, then, what is the difference? Yeah, what is the difference? I mean, I have to sort of look it up myself. So a morpheme is like the smallest part. If you were to break down a word into its individual sounds, each one of those sounds would be a morpheme, right?
Right. They're the pieces of the word, just like letters are the pieces of spelling a word. So like the that you add to a word to a thing to mean a person who does this, like an actor, right? A farmer, right? So that's an example, right? The pieces that go together, the building blocks of words that sometimes have a meaning of themselves.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So what's a morph then? Is that?
I mean that
morpheme?
There are several different things that could mean. I'm not sure what it's referring to in this context. The whole, yeah. That could mean multiple different things.
Right, and then another term that gets used a lot is a phoneme, which is a similar thing, but I think that refers to the actual symbol that we use.
Well, so the phoneme is a specific sound, but it really means a group of sounds, right? That all sounds close enough together that we refer to them as one sound. But with the important thing to realize, and so then there is a symbol for each phoneme. But it's important to realize that there are actually dozens of ways to pronounce that phoneme that are all slightly different. One symbol, even an IPA symbol being used for sound in one language, might be slightly different from that same symbol being used for a word in a different language, because even though they're roughly the same sound, there's lots of different variations within that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like how many numbers are there between 0 and 1?
Right.
Well,
exactly.
In a way, there's 0, especially with the vowels.
Right. So phonemes are like rounding for sounds. Like we group them into groups that are close together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the phonemes become the individual pieces, the individual sounds that you use to make morphemes and things like that.
Great. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. I'm sorry it may not have been the answer you were looking for, but yeah, thank you for the question. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions. So we've got a couple more questions coming in. We've got another one from Crypto Swan, but first this one from Sumit again. Can you make a video series on prepositions? Yeah, so prepositions are a really big subject that people have a lot of problems with. So yeah, I would love to do a series on prepositions. It's just a matter of finding the time and having it fit into a wider sort of series, I suppose. Yeah, like you say, you're asking for a series on it.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is,
that's what it would take, is a series.
We can, and we would love to. It's just a question of when we can find the time. We've talked about Inside English, the English course, and we've done a few videos on that, but we've also got a few more planned. So that course, although it's up and running, we are still planning to add more to that. So those are our sort of next priority, as well as we also want to do a few one-offs to talk about what's in the course. And things. So yeah, I mean, a series on prepositions would be great. I would love to do that. It's just a matter of time, finding the time to do it. So yeah. Is there any? Let us know, Sumit, if are there any prepositions or any other questions about prepositions that we could answer now that you've got? Any specific prepositions that you have problems with? Let us know. Okay, now we've got this other question from Crypto Swan. So keep those questions coming in if you have just joined us. Thank you for watching. And yeah, what we do here is we're just here to help you and answer your questions about learning English. So if you do have a question, please let us know in the chat, or just say hi. It's always great to hear from you and hear who's watching and where you're from. So yeah, So Crypto Swan says, you mentioned before about finding communities to speak to native speakers. Do you have any particular recommendation for general conversation?
So I don't recommend a community for general conversation, right? I don't recommend a community for learning English, because if you go there, all the people will be people who are learning English, not necessarily native speakers. What I recommend is find a community about something that you are passionate about, not about English. If you're into video games, find an online community that discusses video games. If you like film, find an online community that you know, if whatever genre you like, horror, science fiction, whatever. If you like, you know, art or music, find online communities where people are discussing these things in English and join in. Don't look for places to you know, that are welcoming people to practice English. Just go and participate in these communities that are already speaking English, because that's how you really practice, is not by practicing, but by having natural conversations, right? So that's what I recommend, right? To find something, find a community that's already speaking English about, the community is around something that you really like already.
Yeah, and there's always hundreds of groups online, and I think nowadays, you know, especially this year, everyone's got accustomed to using Zoom and do the video calls and things. I've actually just joined a Facebook group related to one of my other businesses, and I've been on. In the last month, I've had two sort of group chats with people from the Facebook group, and I've had 4 conversations one-on-one with people from that group. Yeah, it's very natural now. You don't really need to find people in your country, native speakers in your country to speak to. You know, if you could watch this video, you've got the technology to have a conversation with somebody one-on-one, regardless of where they are in the world. You just have to go out there and find them. And like you said, Tony, the best way to do that is to find what you're passionate about, and find other people who are also passionate about that. And you know, the benefits of that can go way beyond your learning English. You know, you never know what it could lead to. You might find your husband or wife, or a business partner, or someone who can give you an opportunity.
Absolutely.
You never know. So yeah, just get Googling and search on Facebook, and yeah, there's lots of different places where you can do that. Yeah, so if anyone does do that, if anyone is in any groups that are active on Facebook or wherever, and you have had conversations with people, yeah, let us know. It'd be great to hear if people are already doing that. So yeah, let's see. Crypto Swan says, thanks for all your hard work doing these live streams. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, it's always a lot of fun to do them. So here's another question.
Oh, Victor.
Victor. Hello, I'm from Ukraine. I've learned English pronunciation from your YouTube, from your videos on YouTube. So not a question.
that's
But yeah,
excellent.
great. Thank you for watching, and I'm glad that you're here. Let us know if you've got a question, Victor. So that is cool. We've got to the end of the chat, and we've run out of questions. This has never really happened before.
No, not really. Yeah.
Normal. So yeah. So do get your questions coming in. Otherwise, we might need to end a little bit early. Here's a comment from Level, English teacher from Atlanta. Small clarification. Oh yeah, phonemes equals the smallest unit sound in a word.
That is correct. That is correct. However, it is also true that the phoneme is a group of sounds, right? Now,
Yeah.
maybe I'm miscommunicating my terms, but what we're talking about is that same phoneme, how you pronounce it, is going to be pronounced slightly differently in either different words or different languages or by different people, right?
Yeah. So like the different ways of saying the same sound, like ah, you could say ah. They're slightly different, but they're all the same phoneme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they would still come under that same category.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So they are the individual sounds, right, that make up a language, but we group them into these individual groups that we call phonemes, so that we can compare sounds that are almost exactly the same as just one sound. But the reality is there are a bunch of different smaller sounds that are all very, very similar. Yeah. But thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. It's great to have. You're obviously an expert in phonetics. I think people often think of me as an expert because they see the videos that I've made, and I learned a lot making those videos. But my knowledge doesn't really extend that much beyond them, but I know that people have found them, very, very useful, and because I think I was one of the first people to make videos on phonetics and things on YouTube.
Probably.
So,
yeah.
Like I said, I've always, coming from a teaching English as a second language background, and not just background, but that's still what I'm focused on. I've always resisted getting really, really deep into phonetics because it's such a big subject, and it gets very sort of complicated, and it's just not what my students need, really. Sometimes that's what they think they need, but really they want to learn English, they want to express themselves.
Yes.
And so phonetics is a small amount of phonetics is a useful tool, but it's not to disparage the science of it, the subject. It is very interesting, and a worthy topic. It's just we always get questions that go a little bit beyond my knowledge, which is why it's so good to have Tony here, because he's much more knowledgeable than me. He says, my pleasure. I use your IPA videos to teach phonetics in my online classes. Okay, that's great. It's great.
They are excellent videos.
Yeah, get in touch, because sounds like you are very knowledgeable, so maybe it'd be good to have you on. I've been planning to one day maybe get some other guests on the live streams. So if you'd be interested in that, maybe we can do something. Okay, now just going back, we did have a comment. Going back to the prepositions thing, Sumit just had a comment. He says, I want to discuss prepositions vast. So I think you mean you want to discuss everything. Unfortunately, we can't really get into everything about prepositions now because it is vast. It is a vast subject.
Topic. Yeah.
So in the live stream, we can maybe, if there's one particular question you've got on that, we could definitely talk about that. We can't talk about the whole subject, unfortunately. But yes, it would be good to make some videos on that. Let's see. I think there was some questions. How can I improve listening power Listening power. What's listening power? You mean
Yeah, I mean,
listening skills?
we got a question last week about word power too, and I'm not sure that
Yeah.
we're using the same. I don't think we mean the same thing when we say that.
I
So
think perhaps there's a particular book or course that Sumit is using, which is
maybe
using
so.
this term listening power and word power, but it's not. It means something within that course, but it doesn't mean anything outside of that. But listening skills. I mean, how can we improve listening skills? That is a good question.
That is an excellent question, always, right? I mean, some of that doesn't even have anything to do with English or language. It's just about finding ways to make sure that you're paying attention. One thing that I've heard is, I mean, obviously, one way that you can that helps some people is to take notes. Practice taking notes. I knew this person who always was taking notes when people were talking, even if it was not something he needed to remember. He would take notes because it helped him practice paying attention and listening and for specific things that the person said. Now, if I do that, I just shut down. Like, it's really hard for me to write about something and listen at the same time because I'm thinking about things about what I want to write. So it really depends. For some people that works really, really well. For other people, it just really doesn't, right? But there are other techniques that you can use to focus your attention, right? Like thinking about individual words or repeating things back to yourself in your mind as you're hearing them. There's lots of different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I often fall into the trap of not listening very well and just thinking about what I want to say rather than listening to the other person. I think that's kind of a natural tendency that we all have. But just try to be aware of that and try to, when you don't think about what you want to say next, really listen to what other people are saying or to what's being said. I guess that's a good tip. But because I mean, with all these things, there's no easy answer. There's no magic trick. It's just it just takes work, just takes practice. But that's not a very satisfying answer.
Practice is the magic.
yeah. So I'm just trying to find some tips, but I would say that's probably my tip. Don't think about what you want to say next. Focus on what you're listening to, the person. Okay. So
a question from Nikhil.
Yes, here we are. I can easily understand the American accent, and I can understand every English accent, and I consume a lot of American media, but I'm still stuck with an Indian accent.
You're doing better than me. There's definitely some West Country accents or whatever that I can't understand. So,
I mean, there are so many English accents. Even in the UK, there's lots of accents.
Even in just England.
And a lot of native speakers. I mentioned the film Hot Fuzz recently, where there's this scene where there's a farmer and the policeman can't understand the word the farmer's saying. So this is like older policeman has to come and sort of translate, but they both speak in English. It's just the accent is so thick that they can't understand each other. So there are very different accents. They can be so different that you can't understand each other.
So, but the thing to realize, and if we're talking about that scene where there were three people, one person spoke kind of a more normal British accent or maybe a London accent. One had a West Country accent, and one had such a strong West Country accent that you couldn't understand them. So the problem was not that the person had an accent, because there was another person who had the same accent, the West Country accent, but you could understand him, right? So and we talk about this a lot on this channel, that there is absolutely nothing wrong with having an accent. Everyone has an accent. It's just a matter of which accents you have. So there's nothing better about having an RP accent or a London accent or a West Coast accent or a Midwestern American accent or an Indian accent, right? Accents are just something that we all have that shows a little bit about our personal history. What's important is that you can be understood. And as long as you are understood clearly and nobody has to work or find a translator to understand you, that's really that's the goal, right? And we focus on that a lot, that it's just making sure that your pronunciation, the way you're pronouncing those sounds, is good enough that you can be understood. That's the goal. And you shouldn't worry so much about still having an Indian accent or whatever other accents you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and you ask about the Nikhil asked about the Indian accent specifically, and no, there's nothing like you said. It's not the accent; it's making yourself understood. So it's that some people are not speaking clearly enough for you to understand, and because I know there's nothing wrong with the Indian accent. I've known lots of people who speak English that's very easy to understand with an Indian accent. But that's not to say I haven't heard people with an Indian accent that's so strong that I do struggle to understand. So, yeah, it's you either need to get more into, if you do specifically want to understand this strong Indian accent, then you need to sort of learn what it is that become more accustomed to that Indian accent. But that may be not what you want to do, and it might be more that because there's I do have a lot of people watching this channel who are from India, and they want to. I often hear the term accent reduction, which I don't like. But there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Indians watching who want to be more clearly understood by non-Indian speakers. So, yeah, it's. I think the problem, Nikhil, is not. It's not that you are. It's not your. It's not you. It's horrible to say it. It's not you, but it's the people with the thick accent that are not making themselves understood. And if you want to understand them, then you need to understand that accent and learn that accent. If that's really what you want to do. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. Doesn't feel like it was, but yeah, I hope that was helpful. Okay. Okay. So, quick follow-up here.
Yes.
Who says, yeah, I've also written a book called Learn English Like a Newborn to Speak It Like a Native, available on Apple and my website. Oh, that's interesting. So, yeah, it sounds like you'd be an interesting person to have on the show. Is it Leville? Yeah, so get in touch, and it'd be interesting to have a chat with you. So, yeah, there were some people asking about me. Yeah, actually, Sumit, who also says that they're from India. So, yeah, we've been talking a lot about Indian accents. And so, yeah, I'm sure Sumit knows what we're talking about. But yeah, there was some questions about what I do earlier on. I think that was from Sumit. He's asking, am I a professor in university? I'm not. I mean, I used to teach English. I mean, I still teach English, but it's not my main job anymore. So I taught English in South America for a while. I was there about 7 years. That's when I set up the channel. And before that, I was into sort of filmmaking and video making. That's where I learned about YouTube and things. So then when I started teaching, it just seemed natural to start a channel about teaching English. But then when I came back, I've always really been interested in e-commerce though as well. And a long time ago, I started selling books online. And when I came back to the UK, I got back into that. I worked for a company selling books. And now I work for a large e-commerce company. That's my main day job. But I only do that 2 days a week. So the rest of the time I am have another project in the same industry, but then I also do work on do a bit of teaching and work on the YouTube channel. Great. So that's come to the end of the questions, and it is nearly the hour is up. So I think we will start to draw things to a close now. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you have been, and if you have found it helpful, please give us a thumbs up. I think we're going to be doing it at this time again next week and for the next few weeks probably. So put that in your diary if you have one. I'll set up the next stream as well right now, so you can go to englishlanguageclub.co.uk/live, and you'll see the playlist there embedded. And if we've got another live stream planned, you'll see that there, and you can click to be notified. You may have seen how you can do that on YouTube sometimes. So I'll get that set up straight after we end here. So if you wait another 10 minutes or so, you can do that, so that next week you can you can join us again. And if you have any questions in the meantime, remember we've also got our Discord channel. The link is in the description. And yeah, we also mentioned our course, Inside English, that focuses on sort of making tense make sense. It focuses on how all the ways that the tenses are logical, and the way that the structure does make sense, rather than focusing on all the irregular verbs and things like that. So yeah, those are some of the things that we do that you can check out if you're interested. And but yeah, main thing is come back and join us again next week. See you then.